The music stopped. Two people in the back started clapping. Not loud, just steady, in rhythm. 10 seconds later, 5,000 people were on their feet. Nobody told them to stand. That is not a crowd. That is a program running. The same one that turns a school of fish in a single second and sends a Bitcoin chart to the moon, and is right now moving the whole world toward AI at once. It has a name, after synchronization. And there is one thing about it that nobody explains. There was no order in that hall. Fine. But 5,000 people didn't stand up in 5,000 different directions. They all did the same thing. A crowd with no leader still runs somewhere, and it always runs at one door. Somebody put the door there. Hold that. I will come back to it. Start with the clean version, in birds. In 2008, physicists in Rome, led by Andrea Cavagna, put synchronized cameras above the roost where Starling gathered at dusk, and tracked every bird inside the flock of 1,000. Each one was watching a fixed number of neighbors. Not everything inside some radius, the way the models had always assumed. 6 or 7 birds. It's near 7, however far away they happened to be. 7 in a flock of 4,000. None of them has a picture of the flock. None of them knows the shape it's making, and there is no lead bird anywhere. That turn you see, the one that looks like a single intention, is not a decision at all. It's arithmetic running in 4,000 heads at the same moment. Now, a person is not a starling. You and I have reasons. We can explain our choices. And the explanation is usually true, at least on the surface. So the honest question is, why a human crowd makes the same shapes anyway? Steering a crowd without commanding, it needs exactly 2 things. Call it steering with no structure. No one standing over anyone. First, a program already sitting inside people. Not an opinion, because an opinion is the thing you argue about. Something deeper. What feels normal. What they are quietly afraid of. It has been in there for years, and it feels like their own character. Second, a signal out in the shared world. Something visible that says your neighbors are moving. A number moving on a screen. That is enough. The program is the gunpowder, loaded long before. The signal is the spark. You never push the people directly. You load the program, you release the signal, and everyone moves on their own, certain the choice was theirs. And you have already been on the inside of this. Go back to that hall. Second 8. You are still in your seat. The people around you are up. Nothing has been decided yet, but something has already started to move in your legs. And the thought that arrives with it is not, I'm being pulled. The thought is, well, it was good. That is the whole mechanism in 1 second. The signal arrived, the program answered, and it dressed the answer up as your opinion of the music. Hold on to that second, because everything I show you now is that same second stretched. One of them over 10 years, one of them happening this week. So, there is no chief executive of Bitcoin, no central bank prints it, and nobody sends out the order to buy. And still, again and again, millions of people buy in the same week and the price shoots straight up, as if a hand were lifting it. Where is the hand? There is not. The program was already loaded. You saw a coworker pay off his car. You heard the number went up again. And that fear of standing still while other people get rich is the gunpowder. The signal is the chart, and this is worth slowing down on, because the line going up is not information about value. It tells you nothing about what the thing is actually worth. It's the sight of the crowd starting to clap. So you match the rhythm, and by matching it, you push the line a little higher, which becomes the signal for the next man. And this is not new. In 1637, in Holland, People traded real houses for a single tulip bulb. Same program 400 years before anyone could blame an app. Now, raise the stakes one more time. Look at the rush into AI. Companies, investors, the man taking a course at midnight after work, all moving toward the same thing at the same moment, faster than almost any shift before it. And notice, no one gave the order. No chief executive announced that everyone must retrain by spring. They're all moving out of one quiet fear. Fall behind and you are finished. That fear is a program installed long before the first tool shipped. The signal is every launch, every headline that says the machine can now do one more thing you used to be paid for. And here is what makes this one byte harder than the tulip or the coin. For most of history, you could learn a trade yarn and live on it for 40 years. Now, the ground shifts faster than a career does. That shift has a name, the law of time, and it has its own video because it sits under most of what this century feels like. Here, it matters for one reason only. The fear is not imaginary. It's a real response to a real signal, which is exactly why it steers so well. You don't have to trick a man into running when the floor behind him is truly falling away. You only decide where the exit is and let him spring toward it on his own. Which brings me back to the question I asked you to hold. Who decides where the exit is? Nobody walks into the hall and places it. That is the part which sounds like a conspiracy, and is not one. The exit was built much earlier inside the definition of what counts as falling behind. Somebody decided what a man is if he doesn't keep up. Nobody signs a document like that. It arrives in school, and in the way work gets described to a 15-year-old, years before he is choosing anything. So by the time the signal reaches you, you are not choosing a direction. You are choosing how fast to move in the one that was already obvious. And you didn't miss this because you are not sharp. A thing stays invisible when no one ever handed you the idea that would let you see it. Nobody gave you the concept of a crowd that steers itself. The fix was never to think harder, it's to widen the circle. That is what I do here, one mechanism at a time, and the tool that goes with it, so you get harder to move without your own say-so. If you already feel the strings and you want to look at the actual wiring, this is the channel for that. So I stopped asking who is behind it. Now, when a whole crowd moves at once and I feel myself pulled along with it, I ask two quieter things. What was loaded into me so that this became my normal thing to want? And who benefits from it staying normal? Not who is evil, who benefits from nobody checking? The second one I like the least. But both of them run into the same place, back to the door. Somebody wrote the definition of falling behind before I was born and handed over in a form I would carry as my own thought, not an order, a concept. That is what I mean by conceptual power, and the only power in this whole video that needs no crowd, no signal, and nobody's permission. I mapped that one out on its own, and it sits one floor under everything you just watched. It's also why two men at the back of a hall can put 5,000 people on their feet. The room was already leaning that way before the music stopped.